Thanks for joining. My name is Justin. I'm the founder of Parting Stone. I'm here with Melanie Lenci, end of life planner. Thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thank you. I'm super excited.
Yeah. So before we jump in, I want to introduce Stephen Knight, who you can see on the screen right now. He's our MC. He's going to be managing the chat. But Stephen, why don't you do a little intro and share with the community how they can interact?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. We're really excited about this discussion today. So we are going to have an interactive discussion between Justin and Melanie, and throughout the conversation, you might have some questions. Put those in our question and answer chat. At the bottom of your Zoom window, you should see Q&A. I'll be moderating those. You can upvote anything you think is really interesting, and then we'll get to those toward the end of the discussion.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. And I'm going to spotlight us for everybody before we get started. Cool. So Melanie and I have known each other for quite a long time, and we recently reconnected.
Okay, can I say how when I
Please.
met you? Okay,
Yes.
because I love the fact that we're sitting here, that I'm in your office, and you've got the wall of the beautiful picture behind of the stones. Because when I first met Justin, I had just recently moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it was like, this is 8 or 9 years ago. And we were both, I think, at a session at the Santa Fe Business Incubator. And I remember hearing you talk about your grandfather's passing and the ashes afterwards, and how you just really wanted something that felt more dignified, that had more meaning, and you didn't know exactly what it was yet, but you were trying to, you were out in the entrepreneur community too, to try to see what solutions might come from that, or who you might meet to help make that happen. And to see now, all of these years later, what has happened and how many people you have helped. And I'm looking, actually, I can see straight ahead for me is a picture of Gramps, which is actually really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing. Like, yeah, Melanie, we connected pre-Parting Stone, just when the idea was just percolating. So it's been really cool to know each other that long, and then recently to reconnect. So yeah, tell us, why don't you share how we ended up here today? This is Parting Stone's first ever webinar like this, by the way. We were at Parting Stone headquarters. This was a big experiment, and it was kind of started by a conversation over cocktails.
Because I took an end of life document preparation course workshop at a community college here, and it was about 6 months ago. And I mean, so enthusiastic. I hadn't been so enthusiastic about something in such a long time. And I couldn't stop talking about it. And the people around me were so sick of hearing me talk about death. And so I reached out to Justin, because I was like,
So I'm talking about this.
I was like, if anyone would like talking about this, it has to be Justin. And so as I was also started talking to him about, oh my gosh, there's this thing, there's that thing, and did you know this? And he was like, oh my God, I didn't know. And then he pretty much was like, you know what? This could be something for our community to share with our community and I was like, would you be willing to talk about it like in a just informal kind of way like this? Because I think that would be fun and super informative. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're really happy that this came together. We're so happy that there was so much interest and we had so many people sign up. Welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. But I think we can maybe jump in.
Absolutely.
And I think my core question, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, first, before we jump in, I do want to just make sure that I mentioned that I'm not an attorney. This is just a big disclaimer. I'm not an attorney. I am someone who simply took an end of life document preparation course, was, like I said, so over enthusiastic about it that I spent weeks and months afterwards continuing to learn even more. I've got a stack of NOLO DIY law books at my home. I'm just like so excitedly pouring through them because I love this, but I'm not an attorney and I'm not providing legal advice. Neither of us are providing legal advice. And much of what I'm going to mention could vary by state. So this is something that for sure look up on your own. Things that I mentioned are things to consider, or things to be able to ask maybe your attorney about, or Google for your state, because these things can vary very drastically by state.
Great.
If you wanted to make sure we
perfect. So to jump in, let's just start at the baseline. Why is this important? Why is pre-planning important? Why is advanced directives important? Why is it important to do this planning?
Well, I suppose personally for me, the reason why it was so important was I don't like leaving things I wouldn't want to leave a mess for other people to have to clean up. I also like making my own decisions, like most of you out there, I'm sure. And that's why this is really important for you is to think about, you know, sure, you're taking time out of your life to do this so that others aren't struggling with it. But it's also what decisions would you make? Like if you have children or a spouse and they're not sure what you would want necessarily to happen, who these items go to, or if you would be wanting to be on life support, did you want to be buried or cremated? These types of things, that adds to the stress of what is obviously to be a very stressful situation. I found the experience of doing the will, the power of attorney, and advanced directives to be completely empowering. I know some people don't really love that word these days, but I felt it was just a huge relief. My thoughts were going to be honored, and I did the best I could to take care of my loved ones and the people that I'm asking to serve as an executor and to serve in these positions afterwards. And that just made me feel good.
Mm-hmm. Those are all great reasons.
You feel good too.
Some emotional reasons, some practical reasons, some reasons for caring for yourself, and some reasons for caring for other people, the people you love. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So as we were talking, you were kind of like listing off all these super interesting facts about like things that were surprising. Also, my dog Forrest is in the makeshift studio, so you'll see his tail once in a while go by. So you were mentioning all these interesting facts, and I was like, man, we should share these and talk about these. So we can kick this off with the first one, which is 59% of Americans don't have a will or an estate plan.
Yeah.
Why is it so many people that don't have this, and why does this matter?
Well, this is not, it can be a time-consuming task, even though you can do it basically, but that statistic is from caring.com, and it breaks down that about 24% have a will, 13% have a trust, and 4% have something or another. And so it really is, there are a lot of people out there, and especially, I think one of the statistics is that it's parents with children under the ages of 18, they're the largest percentage who do not have a will. And they're the ones who, for guardianship purposes, would really be serving their family best, especially with the fact that there are so many, different blended families these days, and that sort of thing. But also, 1 in 10 people have moved since doing their will. Now, these laws can vary so drastically by states. From what I've learned, New Mexico is fairly easy in terms of, especially in comparison to a place like California. A state like California sounds like extremely difficult, and you're likely not going to get away from anything cheap, even if you do have the majority of your affairs in order. But still, the most that you can get in order, the better. And I also get why this happened. I mean, it took me 9 years. I'm a dorky person who has something called a life plan. And since 2016, it was on my list. And every year I just carry it over and be like, I'll get to this year. And there's something called free will, which I had found years ago. It's a platform where people can do their will for free. And now actually you can do your power of attorney and advanced directives. The information stays on the platform, but I knew that was out there. I had that, I had added that in my little life plan to be like, I'll come back to this, but I did have a lot of questions. So when I saw that community college, this end of life document preparation workshop was being offered, I was like, I was so excited. I don't know that anyone's been as excited. So yeah, I jumped on it.
Great. And then so free will, that's one resource that'll be provided. There'll be a PDF that follows this podcast. There's a webinar that will have all of these resources for you. All right, and the next interesting, surprising fact here is this one was shocking for me that it takes an executor 570 hours and 16 months to settle an estate. That is a huge job and responsibility. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so the average executor, 570 hours over 16 months. That statistic is from estateexec.com, and that's an estate or an executor software, helps you in settling the estate. And I mean, I don't know about you, but at least for me, I like the person that I had assigned as my executor. So for me, I want to do everything I can to help her avoid things like probate, because probate is really what's going to take a considerable amount of time. Say you have property in different states as well, that may be something where then probate is opened in multiple states. And probate comes into play when you have more than $50,000 in assets that are unaccounted for. And that's what you're in your will, what you're doing is accounting for your assets, just like when you assign beneficiaries to things, you're accounting for your assets. And so at least in a state like New Mexico, it's $50,000. I believe in California, it's more than 3 times that threshold. That if you have less than, I believe it's somewhere around $180,000 in assets, then you wouldn't have to go to probate. Here it's 50, but anything above that's not accounted for, then probate comes into play.
Can you tell me what are the kind of main components of estate planning that we're talking about here as we go through these points?
Main components.
As in like a will and what else?
Will and or trust. Typically, a trust is also accompanied by a will as well, because the will is where, especially if you have children under the age of 18 or pets, where you're wanting to assign guardianship, that's done through a will. Also, typically trusts include a simple will, something called a pour over will, which is then designed to say essentially anything that has not been mentioned in the trust is contained into this will and will pour over into the trust. But also estate planning is advanced directives. I include it. I'm not sure if everyone else does, but power of attorney for sure. I have heard some financial planners, I've heard it in some schools, the power of attorney is almost more important than the will. Because let's face it, quite oftentimes people are incapacitated before they actually die. And the power of attorney enables someone else to do specific duties that you're outlining in there. Something like you can check the box as to whether they're just the financial power of attorney, or is it real estate power of attorney, medical power of attorney? That's typically in advanced directives. But yes, so power of attorney is actually really important. That it has to do with before you die. And then once you die, that is pretty much trash and your will comes into play.
Okay, interesting. That's good context.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for.
Sure. Yeah, I'm learning too. So
excellent.
I'm glad you're here. Okay, so third point, you should appoint a personal representative for your final wishes in your will. Why should we do this?
Okay, so this was, I was like, went through the class. This didn't come up necessarily in the class that I had took or the workshop, but I learned by speaking to a funeral director, because afterwards I've spoken to a couple of different funeral homes locally, and I learned that if a personal representative is not appointed for your final wishes and your paperwork has not been done for your funeral or at a funeral home or such uh, that this also could then just go to your next of kin, which may not necessarily be who
Hmm.
you would want. Next of kin, at least in this state, and this may be the same in your state, might vary slightly, but it's typically spouse, child, parents, sibling, grandparents, and then et cetera down the line. And again, you might be fine with that, but appointing the personal representative for your final wishes, they're taking care of that end, which is different than necessarily being your executor. I stated this, I wrote a little paragraph, put that in my will, and I also did add this in my advance directives as well, just so that, because my thought is the person who's my medical person, different than executor person, and wanted her to be aware, okay, if I were to then suddenly die, you're the one at least that's looking at these papers most recently. Now you know what my next steps are and who is taking over that, my personal representative. So you definitely want to appoint someone for your final wishes.
Great. And so we just talked about personal representative for final wishes. And now this next point is about you can appoint a co-executor on your will or a co-agent on your power of attorney.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Okay. So it's almost like finance where they have all these different, like to change up terms, but executor is typically referred to for a will. Agent is who you're assigning in your power of attorney to take responsibility, but a co-executor or co-agent. So say like me, your power of attorney and your executor live across the country. Hi there. Because I know she's watching. And I hope you're taking notes because you're going to get your stuff together next. Okay, so power of attorney and executive, she lives across the country, and it's just super helpful because while she is the best person for those roles and responsibilities, I have someone local that I was able to assign a co-executor or co-agent. And you need to specify what you're asking them to do. You can have a co-agent or a co-executor if you want someone that's keeping check on your executor or agent. Then if you simply assign one and say that they need to sign off on everything the other person is doing, that can be very cumbersome. You really think before you do that, because that makes it really difficult for the other person. But in this case, when you are specifying that this person is boots on the ground to do the shipping my computer and my phone afterwards, sending the paperwork that's in my safe, accessing that, taking care of the house, the plants, my little kitty, your pets beforehand. So a co-executor can be super helpful, someone local, especially if you have executor across the country or live alone. Super helpful.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for describing the difference between those. I didn't know that. Okay, so another thing I didn't know, I'm very familiar with cremation authorization form. Parting Stone sees those a lot, but I am not familiar with a pre-death cremation authorization form. What is this?
Yes, this I was excited to learn about too. So it's like cremation self-authorization form. It may be like titled something slightly different in your state, but this is especially if your arrangements have not been finalized or paid for yet, you can fill out this form so that it cannot be contested. Fill out. If it asks for witnesses, get the witnesses. If it asks for notarization, get the notarization. Since I was doing it along with my will, I had mine notarized as well. This way, if your family members are like, what did she want? And the funeral home doesn't have to question this as well. And especially for me, it's in my family. Was burial traditional for it had
Traditional in my family.
traditional for my
Yeah.
And I knew that wasn't what I wanted.
Right.
So
Yeah,
I was
that's
really
changing with my family's. My parents' generation, I think, is going to the cremation route. But my grandpa was a pastor, so he was very much like, and I don't know if I've shared this with you, but he waited until about 3 weeks before his death, but he called the funeral home, prepaid and planned everything.
No.
And I was like, Grandpa, why did you do that? And he was like, I don't want them taking advantage of your grandma. So I I planned it all.
Oh my,
And then he died 3 weeks later, and it was all planned and paid for, and it was really sweet. It was like it was like a beautiful, like kind of final gesture. But anyway, I remember that. That was about 10 years ago.
oh my gosh. And it does, it comes out, it comes across like that as a beautiful gesture, something that he did that he
Yeah.
didn't leave
Yeah.
to, and that was taken care of.
Yeah, it was really sweet.
Ramps.
Grams, yes. All right, this one's like a hot tip, it feels like. Uh, this one says a lot of people put their will, power of attorney, and advance directives in a safe deposit box. Tell me why you would or would not want to do this.
I think it's a silly number of people still put
Silly number of people, yes.
try to make it. Okay. I'm sure this isn't you. And I know this isn't one of your employees who, after reading this, was like, oh, dang, that's exactly what I did. But yeah, no, safe deposit boxes are often sealed after a person's death. And so, sure, like maybe you're fine, your spouse is still living, they're able to go to the safe deposit box. But if not, and no one else has access to that safe deposit box, all the proceedings may end up actually being done. Some safe deposit boxes aren't open until after probate has been finished.
Wow.
And so your documents may be in there, advance directives, power of attorney, if that was needed at some point, or will, and
They're useless because they can't be accessed.
practically useless. Yes. And so really what's most important here, talk to your loved ones. Just talk to your loved ones, let them know what your wishes are and where your paperwork is. Any of the paperwork, how they can access that. Even if you have a home safe, make sure that not just you, multiple people know where either the spare keys are or the code. That is, again, super important because that is also something that happens with the wills in the safe, or it's unsigned, or it's unwitnessed. I think I'm almost positive, but definitely feel free to check on this. A will doesn't necessarily even need to be notarized in the state of New Mexico and several other states, but it does need to be signed and witnessed. And so I have, in conversations I've had with the local probate judge here, she has mentioned that when a will comes to her and it hasn't been witnessed or signed, it has to be considered invalid.
Wow.
And then she has to go by the rules of next of kin. So yeah, honestly, best to communicate, letting people know the information that's in those documents. So even if say I was hit by a bus, my person who, my advanced directive, why am I calling it my advanced directives person? My medical power of attorney, she knows. And it's easier for her because I also did pick a person, and this is something to consider, who's aligned with my feelings on this. So it's not like I'm making her make a very difficult choice on what my preferences would be if I were incapacitated. But again, so communicate, but even better, the best, what you really should do, and I have done this, is copies. Give the people who you're asking to be your executor, your power of attorney, copies, and also, put a copy somewhere else. I give my aunt and uncle a copy too, so that they have one at their house so that they'll know what's going down. But then my executor has her copy, and then so does my co-executor, and my medical power of attorney. So really, it's the best thing you can do is to communicate. And this way you make sure you're on the same page and that they don't have questions afterwards.
Right.
What does she mean by this? Yeah.
Yeah. And it seems like one thing that's really important is accessibility to all these documents. And another thing that seems to be a trend in these questions or in these fun facts are clarity in whose role is what. And one of those things is in this next fact, which is banks don't always do beneficiaries like your IRA or 401k. And this seems very important. So tell us about what the difference is with banks.
I know. I was, naturally I was thinking like, okay, let me fill out my beneficiary form at my bank. I bank at a very well-known national bank. But this may be something you encounter as well, that uh it's not called beneficiaries in a number of banks. It's called pay upon death or
Mm.
transfer upon death form. Like those, that's what you need to fill out. Again, you can always add like a co-owner. So say you're married, that's easy enough to add your spouse as the co-owner. There are some schools of thought that say, if something then happens to you or you're sued, then that bank account is subject if it's joint. So, talk to a tax person or your money person about that choice. But, of course, adding a spouse, that's fine, or a co-owner. But pay upon death or transfer upon death. For me, I was going to put my executor on this, so it would make it easier for her to access my funds as well after death, so she can get started on things and not have to make payments on my electric or whatnot on the house until that got passed on. But I actually did have to go to the bank, physically go to the bank. I couldn't just pull up a form for the bank. I had to go and I had to bring all her information, get date of birth and her social security number, and I had to have that with me in order to process that and get her as the pay upon death person. So they don't make it necessarily easy, but also you'd want a primary person and a contingent person. This way,
Mm.
to remember that. And another additional in the fun fact, so like 401ks and IRAs, uh, and annuities, you definitely want to make sure to keep that information up to date. How many stories are there of this person had divorced this person? I remember not too long ago when I had started a job, and when you're just signing the paperwork and you're like, oh, I've got this life insurance policy, but it wasn't until months later where I was like, is there a benefit? Oh no, I never put a beneficiary on that. So had I died in the meantime, just tons of money goes unclaimed
Right.
because of these types of things. And with an IRA, life insurance, and things like annuity, your retirement accounts, uh, whatever information you have on the account with that institution. So whether you fill it in online or you have an actual person, which I know is rarer these days, but if filling in that beneficiary information online, because that will trump whatever is in your will.
Mm.
You technically don't have to add the information in your will. I added it and it is exactly the same, just so that my executor can see, okay, here, this is what I have assigned going to these people to make it easier. You could also do printouts from the companies that are stating these are the beneficiaries that I have. So this way your executor can follow up and make sure that these people are getting what they are. But whatever is online or assigned directly on those accounts will trump whatever you put in your will.
That's
So
really important.
always make sure, whenever you move, like all of these things, someone else has died, you want to make sure update.
Great. So with the previous data point that you shared about 570 hours to settle an estate, this one makes more sense. And it says you should try to set aside or allocate some money for your executor as well as the guardians you assign for your children and your pets.
Yes. And some states make this, I wouldn't want to say easy, because in New Mexico and possibly in your state as well, it states this little paragraph within the will that is that the executor is entitled to reasonable compensation. So after looking online and seeing that some states, this could vary. It could be a percentage, 1% to 5%. I'm like, that's a big difference. So I called a probate judge here, and Judge Montoya, what does reasonable compensation mean? And she was like, well, I wish it was a little bit more clear, but that's exactly, it doesn't get any clearer in their law books.
What's typical?
And she said, it just has to be reasonable. I said, well, can we do hourly or do we? And she said, You can, but it has to be reasonable. She said, do things like tally up if you have to take plane trips, that any sort of mileage, any expenses, executor can tally these things up so they get reimbursed from the state. But yeah, anywhere from 2 to 5%. It's going to vary completely by the state, some percentage, some hourly. And you can also account for this for your executor or the guardians of your pets or your kids by putting them as the beneficiary on your IRA, those type of accounts, life insurance. You could also, the pay upon death for banks, you can set up a specific bank account for them in their name. But also, yeah, you really don't want to forget the guardians of your pets or your kids because, our pets live a long time. Some of us, I've got an older little one at home who just like every time he seems on the verge of death, just seems to make these miraculous recoveries. And I want to make sure that person who I've asked to take care of them, it's not just a burden.
It's a big job to ask someone to, care for a pet or a child.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. This one seems really important, and I'm interested in how you can go about doing this. But if all of your assets are accounted for in your will, you can avoid making your executor go through probate.
Yes.
That sounds like from what I've heard, like that sounds like the dream. That's like the goal in some estates. How does one achieve that?
Yes. And this definitely is not in all states, but in some states. And we're lucky. Look up your state. I actually, even after going through the 5-week course, this was still a question I had. It wasn't made clear to me at all. I also, because I went online, I Googled, in New Mexico, do you have to go through probate? Yes, if in New Mexico, you have to go through probate if assets over $50,000. But what it really should have said, if assets over $50,000 that are unaccounted for. And so, again, you may live in a state like this as well, which allows you to do this. We have forms like a transfer deed on death, where that's the form, you file it with your county clerk, and that's the form. It shows that your house is getting transferred. So this is in a purposes, if you're doing a will, this is something that you can use without establishing a trust. And then making sure you have beneficiaries assigned to all of your accounts, your cryptocurrency, your stocks, your annuity, everything assigned that you would want. Your vehicles, going to motor vehicle and assigning someone else. If you wanted someone to be a co-owner of your car, you have them add but for these purposes, to make sure I went to motor vehicle and I had them, they add an or in the middle. So let's say large, and they actually did do it incorrect the first time. And I said, is this really going to say or? And she's like, oh yeah, this is going to say or. And then the title got mailed to me and it had an and in the middle. I was like, no. So if your motor vehicle, if you put add a title or, then that would transfer without probate. This means that you've assigned all of your assets. And so like I said, because it wasn't clear in the workshop that I took, and then online I got confused. So I made an appointment. You can do this too, is to make an appointment with the judge. And she was able to clarify, showed her all my paperwork. She's like, you got anything else? I was like, pretty much, I have accounted for just about everything in there. Like for sure, nothing over $50,000. But and this is why too, make sure to keep it up to date, because if you did end up getting, someone else passed in your family, you've gotten some stocks, or suppose you work for an amazing company, get such a spectacular bonus or whatnot, something like that. You'd want to make sure that money was accounted for, or whatever that asset is, because when I was looking into probate, that was, to me, it just felt terrifying. There is in the county, you go to district court or county court, apparently, but on the website, it's great information, but you pull up the packet and it was a 30-page packet.
Wow.
30 pages of terminology that nothing makes sense to a lay person. Essentially, there are things you have to do, like notice to creditors, which you never want to learn about. You truly don't. You just if you don't have to. So this is something for you to do for yourself, but also to ask the people that you love to get their documents in order so that hopefully they can prevent you from being the one to be going through probate.
Yeah, and the next one seems related, that many people think they've prearranged their end of life simply by telling their family their wishes. So why does that not work? And what is the appropriate way to do it?
Oh, yes, verbal is still not enough. And it is interesting that I was in a workshop and the guy sitting next to me, he was like, I'll just do a video will. I was like, video, it won't stand up in court. It won't stand up in court. Things like a signature is needed. I've even, and I just overheard this in the workshop that I was taking about advanced directives, that if people put something like DNR, do not resuscitate, like a tattoo on their wrist, that won't even, paramedics can't abide by that. They need something which has a signature. And there are forms like that as well, where you can, it's like bright green form. You can get these often at doctor's offices and put them on your refrigerator in case the paramedics are ever called, or forms also to put in your car, in your glove compartment, if like do not resuscitate, but it's because signatures are needed. And so also, some states are doing digital or video advanced directives or starting that out, but it's still not at all the case with a will. Just simply telling people. And besides, you think about it, you may have told one person one thing and someone else another, and then what are they going to argue? Or, oh, this was told to me more recently, or that. It's just simply not going to stand up. And it may be okay. So verbally, you have a spouse, and verbally you tell your spouse, and they make sure everything's taken care of just the way you want them. But it's not okay for everyone, and especially if you have children and multiple children, it's going to be confused.
Yeah, there's a survey in the funeral industry that I read every year, and one of the questions every year is, what's the most challenging part about your job as a funeral director? And every year, the top answer is arguing families. And
I can believe it.
That's the most challenging part of the job. And most of that, I would imagine, is because there's unclear documentation, or they told one family member one thing and another family another at a different time. And there's just a lot of confusion. So it seems like this whole process is to care for your family. It's about clarity. It's about clarity. It's about reducing financial burden, potentially, if you're going to prepay for those expenses. And, this is going to be the worst day of your survivor's life, some of them. And to the extent that we can help them move through that by pre-planning, I think it's really important.
Absolutely. So yes, the verbal just isn't enough. And I believe I had mentioned this before, as far as making sure you're signing your documents, signing that will, having the witnesses, a notary, in case you're in front of one, they can serve as a witness as well. And if notarization is required, getting that done. But yeah, video will still not going to hold up in court. Or a voice memo.
Not going to hold up.
Not.
Good to know. So no safe deposit boxes, no voice memos. Those are the hot tips.
You can still have a safe deposit box. Just make sure enough people have access to that thing. Of course, no one ever expects they're going to die with their spouse either.
Right.
So yes.
Yeah. All right. And the final one here is, you can pre-plan and prepay for both your funeral arrangements, and you can prepay for solidified remains. So tell me about prepaying. Because this is a different aspect. We've been talking a lot about planning, which is important, but the paying aspect can be important as well.
Yeah, I just have to say, this was all about this peace of mind piece. In my case, I was doing all this work to set up all the rest of it, But to know that in getting the prepaying checked off the list too, then I was really letting my loved ones just focus on themselves and taking care of and being there for each other, as opposed to, oh, how does this work? I just died. They can't access my account. Is someone else is supposed to pull this money out of their account? So I did feel like this was insanely important, the prepaying and the pre-planning. I put like making sure that you can get your will and funeral home paperwork and all sorts of ready for your personal representative. But also this was so important to me because of how much of a part parting stone has played in my story. Because again, like meeting you all those years back, I just like, it was stuck on me. I was following what you were doing. And then as seeing what you came up with, this just, it makes me feel calm. It makes me feel so good. And so for years, I was just having the idea turn in my head. I knew I wanted to be turned into parting stones. I call myself like my stones, my parting stones, but I knew I wanted to be that to happen. And so it's in my will paperwork, my advanced directives paperwork, where I also state that, cremation, no viewing, cardboard box me, and then parting stone. And then I have a spreadsheet. It's like I wrote like parting stone recipient list, like an Excel spreadsheet.
That's so interesting.
Everyone's contact information, their cell phone in case like their address has changed and the person wants to change it, like check there. But I'm gonna update this thing. It's got about 20 people on it, since I know that about the body produces anywhere between 40 and 80 stones. So I was like, okay, if I have about 20 people on this list, but some of them are couple friends of mine, some of them are like I really close to a lot of my cousins, and so the siblings of the cousins, and my instructions are for everyone to that anyone on this list is to get 2 of my stones, and they are to take one of the stones with them on one last adventure with me, and to leave me wherever that adventure takes them.
That's really
and sweet. To me, I just find it's actually, I get like these goosebumps or this excitement to be like, oh, I'm gonna get to go to all these places I didn't get to go by myself. But it's also like in making either the couples or the siblings like go these places together, or just to have, I feel like it'll help add a little bit of closure for the people that I care about or have just had fun with or just played some part of my life, to be like, yeah, this is cool. This is how I remember Mel. Like it makes me so happy and be able to do this. And then knowing too that you recently started, I knew that it was available at funeral homes to be able to do at a lot of funeral homes, especially like here, you're everywhere, which is so great. But now, even on your website, you can pre-plan, prepay.
Totally. So this is not that beautiful story and plan for your own death is not why I wanted to have you on to talk about all of these all this great information, but it was a really touching story and something that was beautiful that we talked about. But you're right. You can plan for solidified remains at your local funeral home. Just ask for parting stone. And we also did just introduce the ability to prepay directly on our website. This is something we had many people ask for. There was a lot of people like Melanie who wanted to incorporate solidified remains and parting stone into their plans and to make plans like, I love this one. I love yours, which is like, yeah, take me on one last adventure. That gives such like a nice kind of grief journey experience for each person that you love. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, they'll each have their own individual journey. Yeah, it means a lot to me. So to know that I've been able to do that has meant a lot.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
So I think we're going to close with a couple things. One, I'm going to share just a little bit more about how we can get in touch with Melanie, and then a little bit more about Parting Stone's pre-need program. And then after that, we'll open it up to any questions you guys have. Please put them in the chat. So Melanie, why don't you share how we can get in touch with you?
Well, once they receive the...
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, yeah. because afterwards you're going to receive the full color version of key considerations for your end of life planning. This was something, this was what I wish I had had. I came up with the content after Justin and I were talking about this. Like, what could we provide that would be really useful? I mean, there are tons of excellent checklists out there for all sorts of pieces of this process. But what I had wished I had before starting my end of life planning was something like this to draw the information out. So it's looking at all three, the will, the power of attorney, and advanced directives. And it's helping you to think of the questions that they're going to raise or the things that you're going to need to think about before filling in those blanks. So even if you just decide to use free will, or a template. And there's also on the last page, I do give some suggestions for some ways to be able to do this on your own.
Yeah, and what I really, this is step one for planning. And what I really love about it is that the first question is why? Why is this important to you? And like, what are your values? What are you trying to accomplish? And I think that that sets such a great foundation for all of this like kind of boring technical legal stuff that you then have to go through, but being able to attach it back to like a core purpose, I think is really helpful. So I think this is a really amazing document. We're so excited to share it with you guys.
And so my contact information will be on there for you when that gets emailed to you after this.
Yeah, great. And if you guys are interested in learning more about Parting Stone, please go to partingstone.com. To pre-plan, you can hit the plan ahead button to get more information about how to do that, what the benefits are, and you can easily go through and check out online if you'd like to do that. And we have a really interesting and cool promotion right now, thinking about this idea that pre-planning ahead is really also for our loved ones as well as it is ourselves. We're offering a free book called The Stories We Leave Behind, it's a beautiful book that shares all of these different stories of how other families experiences with solidified remains. And it's just such a great resource to share with your family what this is. Like what even, when they open not your safety deposit box, but maybe my family, it's a briefcase, and it says that you're going to get Parting Stone. What is Parting Stone? And this is such a great book to do that. And I also think it'd be cool to like wrap and put under, a Christmas tree or give it as a gift this holiday season.
Oh, I completely do too. If anyone wants to get me this as a gift, I'll just say it.
All right. Well, that concludes the presentation, the conversation part. What did I miss something?
But also for your pets, you can prepay
oh my
for your
gosh.
pets too.
You can prepay for your pets. And this is something unique that Parting Stone does. There are very few other providers online that allow you to prepay for your pets, your fur babies. Like my little guy who's been walking around. So that's something you can do as well while you're planning your own solidified remains and your own memorial. Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
All right, Stephen.
Yeah.
Are there any questions that we can?
Yeah, we've got a few interesting questions. This has been a great discussion. Thank you. I do have a pre-plan for my dog already, so thanks for that. I need to write him into the will though, in case. But we got a couple of good questions. Justin, this first one's for you. Can we get different colored stones? Can you set an expectation about that?
Great question. Yeah. So the solidified remains mostly come out white. However, they do naturally can come out different colors depending on what's inside of our bodies. To be totally honest, we don't know exactly why they come out different colors, but we've seen everything from blues, greens. I'll show you here. There's some speckles. What else? There's some like gray, which is really beautiful. I got we have one that came out red, which was amazing. Oh, here's a really like sandy color one. So bottom line is they come out different colors, but we don't know what colors. So there is no color option. But one of the most beautiful things that I've been able to observe working with families, especially local Santa Fe families, is when they come to receive their loved ones back as solidified remains, as the stones, watching a family open that box and be reunited with them for the first time and open that bag to see what color they are, what texture they are, and to really hold them again is really powerful. And so it is a little bit of anticipation and a little bit of a surprise for your survivors.
It's beautiful. And then Melanie, where is the line between what a funeral home and crematory is responsible for versus like when it goes to parting stone? And if you're making arrangements, how do you coordinate between them?
Oh, well, great question.
I can help with that too.
Yeah. Do you want to take, I mean, I can take it, but
You take it.
Okay. So as a person, as an individual, you simply go to your funeral home. Again, parting stone is very popular in our state. We're like super lucky about that. But you might be in a state where they have never heard of parting stone. And you can ask them, and then they might be able to become one that provides. And so you may have to do it separately, where you plan, and then they process the cremation part of it, and then the cremains, whenever they're delivered to your family, then your family goes through parting stone, or if it's been prepaid for already, then they'd already have the paperwork with their final paperwork. But does that?
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing. So you essentially have two options. The first option is to plan it all through your local funeral home. You can put the solidified remains on there. You can plan the flowers you have. You can plan the cremation or burial. You can plan the event, and you can put your down payment down for all of that at once. However, some people like to work directly with the companies. So some people like to plan the solidified remains directly through us, or if you're going to be buried, there's a casket company that accepts pre-need. There are diamonds that you can prepay for. So there is the option to go direct to suppliers. If you go direct to suppliers, your surviving next of kin or the person responsible will work directly with the companies to receive the service or product. So in our case, if you pre-plan directly with Parting Stone and pay through us, and then you also have a funeral home that you work with, whether you've prepaid with them or not, following your cremation, the person handling your estate would then reach out to Parting Stone and say, "Hi, I have the remains of, my loved one, and we have a pre-plan, and we'd like to start the solidification process and kind of redeem that contract." And then we would just start that process. It's all prepaid. We make it very easy for your loved one, and everything is in a trust where it is safe. So yeah, I
That's
hope
great.
that helps answer the question.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. So
Right.
to be clear, Parting Stone doesn't handle the cremation itself. The funeral home handles all of that stuff.
Yes.
Where Parting Stone handles the solidification process. And then
Right.
Justin, on payment terms, whether it's something that you need right now or you're pre-planning for the future, what are the options to prepay over time?
Yeah, so we have the options on the Parting Stone side to pre-plan and pay over time. We have that option. We know it can be a big expense, pre-planning for death in general and prepaying for solidified remains. And so we do offer planning options. I think right now we have a plan that allows you to pay over 6 months. And yeah, that's an option easily accessible on our website. You can pay via ACH or you can pay via credit card, whatever is preferable for your family. And do you know about how that works on the pre-need side?
With the two funeral homes that I've sort of interviewed and talked to about this and gotten all the information, they do offer some payment options. And might or are likely to encounter is that you may have to purchase something, and it's essentially something through an insurance company. So you're not paying the funeral home directly, you're essentially paying for the insurance. And I would just say read the paperwork to see what you're most comfortable with. Read reviews online as far as the insurance companies to see, because there was one insurance company I was a little bit turned off on, that one funeral home had offered, because the reviews were so low and people saying that they'd been trying to get reimbursed for their mom who had
Mm.
prepaid for this policy. And so those are just things to think about and to consider with this. But yeah, they do typically offer some sort of payment option where it doesn't necessarily need to be all upfront. Um, but yeah, again, I would do the research, do a little digging on those companies, and ask around.
Yeah, and a little more on that. There's two primary ways that funeral homes and companies will accept pre-need payments. One is that money, first is the money would go into a trust, is option number one. Or the second option is that money is an insurance policy. Uh, I think I don't have any opinion on which is better or worse. I think it's personal preference, but I agree it's definitely worth asking the funeral home what method they offer. It might vary by state, it might be vary by funeral home,
Mm-hmm.
and then also doing the background, on
Yeah.
looking at some reviews.
Yeah, because I did feel more comfortable after looking the first one that I didn't feel comfortable. And so yes, then I did go to a second option, which did make me feel a lot more comfortable for sure.
Great. We've got about three more questions. Christopher, I see your hand raised, but everybody is muted. So, if you wouldn't, I think I just saw your question about the stone pop up. Can the stones be illuminated? Illuminated.
Ooh.
That sounds cool. Um, what is super interesting about solidified remains is they are a canvas for personalization. They're a canvas for personal memorial experiences. We have seen all kinds of things, like people leaving them on mountains, or kids like painting on them and drawing on them. We've seen people turn them into jewelry. We've seen people turn them into wall art. And so the answer is treat them like an art medium. If you want to illuminate them, please illuminate them. I don't think they are translucent; they're opaque. So I think you would have trouble illuminating them from the inside out. But I'm sure there's a lot of different creative ways to illuminate. But I love that. I love that question. And if you want to see what some other folks have done with the solidified remains to honor their loved ones, you can go to our reviews on our website, and a lot of folks are putting photos in there of where the solidified remains are, which I love. It's so nice to see.
Yeah, I've seen at times you share it on Facebook, and I really like. There's not much I like, but when I get to see that someone shared their story of the with their loved ones and what they've done with the stones,
Yeah.
it's pretty cool.
And if you
Social
do
media.
end up illuminating the stones of your loved one, please send it to us. I would love to see it. It sounds like a beautiful memorial.
And related to Christopher's question, Amy has a very similar one that she's a polymer clay artist and was thinking
Uh-huh.
of decorating one of her husband's stones, wanted to know if they're oven safe and if
Oh,
you can put them in at what temperature.
interesting. Yeah, I love this. I love these like creative
Yeah.
like activity questions. So that's a hard one for me to answer because I don't recommend heating the stones. However, technically they can be heated. They're very much like ceramic or like a coffee mug, um, like that type of durability. So my recommendation is my fear is that they would crack in the oven. That's why I would not do it. And so just know that that is a possibility that that might happen. Um, if you do it, which I can't recommend, but if you choose to do it, I would recommend heating the stone up with the oven, not putting it directly in a hot oven where it might shock the material. Yeah, that would be, those are my thoughts on that. But same thing. If you do this, we would love to see the results. It sounds like a really beautiful project.
Good. Thank you. What about ashes that are sitting in your home already? I think about a lot of people who have dogs, cats, grandparents. Maybe they've inherited ashes from someone. Is there a time limit at which it's okay to turn them into stones?
Good question.
Yeah.
You seem excited about this one. Do you want to answer
I'm
it?
just excited this was
I know, me too.
because like what the best part about it is it can be as old, I mean, decades and decades old.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You can still help loved ones feel this feeling today.
Right. And, something that we've seen other families do, and something that is, we develop solidified remains because there's a lot of challenges with ashes. They're not necessarily nice to look at. They're kind of messy to scatter. It's hard to pass them down generationally, and it's maybe
And
like
to
a
share
bag
them, like how do you like
to share them.
splitting them
Right.
up to share them, whereas opposed to this, it's like,
Absolutely. And so you bring up one of the challenges we were trying to solve, which was, I'm living with these ashes, or I'm generationally want to pass down these ashes. How do I do that in a more comfortable way? You can absolutely provide us with the remains, the cremated remains of any age, and we can absolutely solidify them. And we think that is a really beautiful choice. Yeah.
yeah.
Wonderful. And if anybody else has additional questions, put them in. We've got one more in the chat.
Okay.
This one's an interesting, challenging one, but what is the
Oh,
worst case scenario if they pre-plan today and 20 years from now need to use Parting Stone services? What if Parting Stone's not around? What if they change their mind? What kind of guarantees and everything do we have to help them?
Yeah, great question. And this is, it took us a long time to offer pre-need because we wanted to make sure that this was truly a good experience for the families that we're working with. And so one of the reasons we chose the trust route is that when we receive that money, it goes into a trust as per state regulation. Therefore, and we legally are not allowed to use that money. Therefore, worst case scenario, if Parting Stone goes out of business, which, we've served over 12,000 families and we're growing, there is no reason right now to think that's going to happen. However, if it did go out of business, that money would be in a trust and refunded back to your family or your survivors. That's worst case.
Cremation is getting only more popular or more with as opposed to funerals and burial.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason we take the money is to really protect it for you and your family until the time is right, and to make sure that your family is covered at the time of need. And so we're doing everything we can over here to ensure that you feel confident and safe with that money in our trust.
I have a question.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, so if the cost goes up on your end and someone has prepaid, do they have to make up the difference between your current cost, or is the incentive to prepay that then you're paying today's rates even if it's a decade later?
Yep, great question. And this is another reason we wanted to launch this program. We had a ton of people reaching out asking if they could lock in the price. And so when you pre-plan today, you lock in today's price for forever. Yeah. And so even if our price, goes up in the future, the amount that you prepaid, your next of kin or whoever's in charge of your estate will never pay more than that for our service. We guarantee that. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Yeah.
One good one. One more, again from Christopher, and he's curious about the Catholic Church's position on solidified remains. So the Pope said the cremation is okay, keep the ashes together, keep them in a sacred space. They haven't addressed solidified remains. I don't think they're on the Pope's radar yet. Justin.
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
Believe me, from
Just
the first year in business, I've been trying to get the Pope to tweet about solidified remains, tell everyone what his position is on it, but he has not, despite a lot of outreach.
you know,
Um,
I should make
however,
this like a personal mission somehow.
I know. Yeah, I think I had a PR company once that I think I told them I would give them a bonus if they got the Pope to tweet about us, but they weren't able to do it. Um, but in all seriousness, you were right. The position of the Catholic Church is keep the remains together and place them and choose a permanent placement option for them. I think there was recently some changes to that. Maybe last year there was some refinements, and to be totally honest, I don't fully remember what those were, so that might be worth looking up. But it really depends on the interpretation of each individual. You could even consult your church um, about their views on it. But what I can tell you is that in our solidification process, we keep the remains 100% together. And just as the crematory returns them as a granular form, we will return 100% of those remains in the stone form. So that's my personal outlook, but obviously that's a personal decision for you to make. But that's a really interesting and good question.
Yeah. Well, that wraps it up for the questions, and this has been a great interaction. You guys have provided a lot of great tips and insights, especially about pets, which I think affects everybody. And then all of Melanie's preparation was really, really helpful. Everyone after this call is going to receive the pre-planning guide that Melanie put together. Is there anything else that you want to sum up for us, Justin and Melanie?
I don't think so. This is my dog Forrest. He's a cute guy. He's been hanging out. Um, I don't think so, but thank you all so much for joining us today. It really means a lot that you took an hour out of your day to spend time with us. Feel free to ask any questions. We'll follow up with an email. We'll follow up with a recording, with the PDF, with some other information. But we're here for you. Please reach out, schedule a call with us anytime. Um, I think that's all for me. Anything from you, Melanie?
No, I just wanted to say, sorry if I jumped around a ton. I hope that you did find some of the information helpful. And if it raised any questions in you that might inspire you to get started on this, because it just is, it really can give you a ton of peace of mind and help those people you love.
Yeah, and Melanie, yeah, reach out to Melanie too. She's getting a business started, but I won't say anything more than that. But reach out to Melanie if you have any questions. She's an amazing resource and a great friend. So,
Thank you.
thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So glad we did this.